So, anyways, all right. So now let's move on to the first original Marvel story, issue number 4.
Issue number 4, The Haunting of Phallus. And yes, I did say Phallus.
Or Talus, if you want to, if they just sign.
Well, if it's like the Thames River,
yeah,
you could pronounce it Talus.
you could.
The Haunting of Talus, which was ringing a bell in both of our minds as we read this, because of course, as you may recall, the famous Talus 4 is a planet in the Star Trek history in the original series.
But what?
Okay, so
completely off subject. But when we get there, one of my all-time favorite comic book issues is it's an annual that DC Comics did called The Last Mission, and it's basically the Enterprise from the old show coming in to get ready for its refit, and Kirk's about to get promoted and all that stuff. But
it's got
and it has Decker in it. That he meets Decker again for the first time, and then you kind of remember, oh, Decker, you're Matt Decker's son from the old show. So you had that kind of, and you had Decker in like the new uniform, and you had Kirk in the traditional gold uniform.
Right.
But anyways, the reason I'm bringing it up is that they go back to Thalys 4 for their final mission. So I always loved that comic because it kind of tied in the old show with the new show, and then also the original The Cage episode. It was just like, this has it all. This is a great issue. So
obviously the writer knew a lot about the Star Trek
and it was
world.
It was really good. So we'll get there one of these days. But
okay,
we're get us started, Ken.
We're going to move on with The Haunting of Phallus. So this was an interesting one. It's kind of a Halloween kind of one in some ways because it has spooky things. It has a haunted mansion on the page,
the splash page,
and definitely has a lot of ghosts and ghouls and things like that. So we'll get into what this reminded me of when I began reading it, but let's go ahead and do the synopsis. Okay, so we just talked about the teaser page, where you actually have the Enterprise coming upon what appears to be a haunted mansion, complete with creaky gates, and the whole thing reminds me a little bit of the Disneyland ride.
And it's in space, just floating in space.
Floating in space. Very odd. Very odd. It goes ahead, and we open up to see Kirk in some very nice quarters, quite frankly. Very spacious quarters, where we see several interesting ships and this is at first I thought it was a ship, but no, it's not the ship. It's actually they're on Earth. So Kirk's being briefed that he's going to go ahead and have to turn the Enterprise into a prison ship to transport a very bad prisoner from Earth to the planet Phallus. So Kirk is there with a admiral, finding out what the mission is. Kirk's objecting to having to be a prison ship, and we are introduced at the first time to a new alien who is a member of the Federation and the alien race that wants to transport this guy. So the prisoner's name is Raitas Migora, which is almost Irish, Migora, and then the ambassador from the planet asking for the transfer, RKGG.
RKGG.
Exactly, no vowels.
No, he's an alien. They don't use vowels.
RKGG. Would you say it's RKGG?
I don't know.
How would you pronounce it?
I wouldn't pronounce it. A lot of these names, like the name of the planet itself, maybe don't warrant themselves to actually pronouncing out loud. So when you're writing a comic book, you can just give it any kind of name, and you don't have to worry about the actor trying to say it.
Because nobody's going to actually say it, except for somebody on a commentary
on a podcast,
show like this.
20 years later.
Okay. Okay, so let's cut. It goes. The story goes forward, and we see on the teleporter pad inside of the Enterprise, we see that the prisoner being transferred onto the Enterprise, and unfortunately, the prisoner is somehow able to break out of the confines that they had him in when they transported him aboard. He ends up killing a security guard and running free on the ship. And we'll talk more about it, but it's interesting that it appears as if it is Yeoman Rand, who is no longer Yeoman, but now Chief Rand, who is doing a little special guest star role. So it's nice to see another character from the past. Okay, so Kirk leave the bridge to go ahead and join the fight. Kirk shoots the phaser from the alien's hands, and then ends up getting hit by the alien's tail. And actually calling him alien is quite appropriate, as we'll discuss, because of how he looks. Very alien-esque. He is drawn very alien-esque. So, to get basically the escaped prisoner is trying to hide inside the ship because he really does not want to go to Thalos, and they end up through Spock's cleverness ends up subduing him with a nerve pinch when Scotty goes ahead and slows him down a bit with sonic sound waves. Okay, so en route, the Enterprise receives new coordinates to drop the prisoner off at, which seems rather odd. So they do it anyway, though. Also, we are shown that there are odd things going on in the Enterprise. There are a couple romantically oriented ensigns who, in the middle of talking to each other, are attacked by a ghost. And actually, it's a ghost, as I recall, that looks kind of like a werewolf or something. So, obviously, odd things are going on that you never saw before. Okay, so as Kirk is being briefed on the visions that are popping up on the ship, Dracula appears on the bridge. Now, I will say this is getting a little ridiculous here a little bit, but that's okay. Go with it. It's Star Trek. You'll love it. Okay, so Dracula appears on the bridge and says that it is all his doing. They try to attack him with phasers, and it does not affect him, and then he transforms into a bat, and then mist, and then flies off into the turbolift. Kirk and Spock track down Dracula from the bridge and find the ambassador was killed, apparently by Dracula, with punctures on his neck. Because apparently alien blood is just as good as human blood in this particular instance.
It's all good, sir.
It's all good. It's all good. They continue to follow the course the Talosians have given them, and they come to a huge haunted house in space. So we see for the first time the haunted house shown on the splash page. They go to ask Migora some questions. Okay, they go to ask him some questions. He warns them that they are the Talosians' prisoners as much as he is theirs. Yep. So basically, Migora's letting them know, I do not want to go back there, and you guys shouldn't go either. Kirk and the away team go ahead and beam over to the house and find a Frankenstein monster attacking a woman. They fight the monster. Actually, Kirk is able to fight off the monster barehanded, and the monster falls out the window. Then they are attacked by every type of old-school monster in the book, even the Kraken from Clash of the Titans. Ooh, I didn't recognize that.
Yeah, I thought it looked just like him.
As the monsters become real, Klingons reveal themselves and tell Kirk there is no escape.
To be continued.
Klingons are actually behind all of this. So I didn't realize it at first, but when I first took a look at these two episodes, I was thinking, okay, number 4, The Haunting of Thalos. And then I took a look at issue 5, whose title is The Haunting of the Enterprise. And I was thinking to myself, not very original. They're doing a lot of this haunting stuff. And then I find out as I'm reading it, oh, it's a two-parter. This is, other than the 3-parter we had in the first 3 issues, I've never ran into a 2-parter. Yep. In the comic book series.
Yeah, because the Gold Key was like the TV show where you hit reset as soon as the issue was over.
Exactly.
Or the episode. So, issue.
All stay on their own.
So now these like Marvel Comics is known for, DC Comics is known for, is to build a whole world and bring up new characters and new situations that'll be kind of interwoven in between several different issues. So I really like this.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah, the writing is more sophisticated.
Again, this one is written by that Marv Wolfman that I was telling you about earlier. So again, he's a huge name in the comic book business.
Good. And apparently, I'm guessing, a Star Trek fan.
Yeah, who isn't? He also wrote a lot of the DC comic book series that we'll get to eventually someday. Now, you gave credit to Spock about sending that sonar wave to disable the prisoner.
No, I said. Oh,
You
I thought I
You
said
said
that.
Spock, but it was
No.
Kirk.
No. What I said is Spock. Spock did the Vulcan neck pinch to disable him, and Scotty set up the sonic waves.
At Kirk's suggestion.
Oh, I did not mention that. You
Yes,
are
right.
right. You are correct. If I could mention something on the front page, the front cover, it says the Starship Enterprise's weirdest voyage.
It is its weirdest.
I think its weirdest voyage is the Voodoo Planet. No, I will not get off the Voodoo Planet.
Number 9 or something of the
It was
Gold
something
Key
like
stuff,
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, which we did not review.
We reviewed it.
Oh, we just went briefly
But we
over
kind
it.
of got off topic and we never
Okay.
really went back to it. So,
Yeah.
on our Facebook, somebody has actually said, "Hey, you need to go back and review Voodoo Planet. I want to see what Ken has to say about it."
Is that maybe your wife?
It's a fan. That's all that
It's
matters.
a fan. It's a fan.
It's
And
a
we'll take
fan.
any fan we can get.
Exactly. So, start off the teaser page at the beginning. I was very happy to see that they did that again. I don't remember it happening very much later on in the other 18 issues of the Marvel series, but I thought it was a nice little nod to what Gold Key did for their 61 issues. So
That's good. Okay, so getting back to something I alluded to briefly in the summary is when I first saw this, I immediately thought of the original series episode Cat's Paw, which was a Halloween theme. If I went back and did the research, I'm sure I would see that episode was probably originally aired somewhere around Halloween, although I could be wrong on that. But this kind of reminded me of that a little bit, and that episode definitely had a Halloween theme, a wizard, a warlock, and some kind of a witch kind of thing, and haunted mansion, scary stuff. And so this kind of reminded me a little bit of it.
yeah,
Especially the
and to
haunted
be honest,
house.
I unfortunately don't remember that one. I kind of remember it, but
Which
I don't remember it.
it wasn't the greatest episode in the world, but at least it wasn't a horrible third season episode either. So it was in the middle, maybe not the most memorable one in the world, as evidenced by not recalling.
Now I'm pretty sure I've seen them all. In fact,
Oh,
I'm
you-
quite
you
sure I've
must have
seen
seen
them all.
this.
But I guess that one just doesn't really ring a bell. The name does, Cat's Paw, so I'm sure I read it somewhere that
Yeah.
that's the name of an issue or an episode somewhere, but I don't remember the episode. But did they have a haunted house in space?
It was on a planet. It wasn't floating around in space.
Yeah.
So they did do something a little different here.
Now, just kind of off topic, I read these years ago, and I was already an adult, so it's not like I read them when I was a kid, like I did a lot of the DC stuff. So a lot of the DC stuff was coming out when I was a kid, and I was just eating it up, and it was great. But I read this a few years back. I was already an adult, so I kind of was maybe a little bit more cynical to some of the sillier aspects to what comic books at this time were. So when I read it the first time and Dracula shows up and all these monsters, I'm like, this is really not that cool. But now that I read it again, and I maybe I didn't read both issues at the same time, and reading them together, and I really, we'll get into it when we get to the second issue, but I really like this story. I think this would have made a pretty good TV show.
Episode.
Yeah, I think it would have been great. But it's just funny how just reading or watching something a few years apart, you get two totally different feels for what the material was. Real quick, in the issue, they keep calling him Captain. Isn't he still Admiral? Or is it when you become head of a ship, they start calling you Captain again? But,
Yeah, 'cause he hasn't
throughout
been-
the ship,
He
throughout the
hasn't been
episode,
busted.
Yeah, no, he's
back
not
yet.
busted down yet.
Yeah. I think tradition, you're a captain if you control a ship.
Yeah.
But